Hey everyone, welcome to Cultivate and Keep podcast. It's Corey and Jeremy. What's happening?
Yo. Nothing much, man. Chilling. Yeah. I mean, it's just
Yeah, at this
business as
point we
usual.
are, you know what? When we recorded the last episode,
Yeah.
I was off on timing. But at this point when we're recording, we're about 6 weeks into quarantine. So when this one comes out, what, 10 weeks?
Probably. Yeah.
Hopefully when this
9
comes
weeks.
out, Corey, we're back to like
free.
somewhat normal. That'd be cool. It really would.
I would. I don't know. I've been hearing mixed reviews.
I know. Let's not go into that.
I saw one right before I left, and it was like, analysts are now saying that like there could be some sort of social distancing required through 2022. And I was like,
yeah, there's
what?
What I've been hearing most is until they developed a vaccine that's like tested and like good to go for the public, like there's going to be some form of like social distancing like measures.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
You know what it is? This whole thing is a wake-up call to how disgusting human beings are. Most people. I mean, myself included sometimes. But I'm like, literally, we wouldn't have this issue if we all washed our hands, we weren't all over each other, we didn't cough on our hands.
Yeah, it is weird to think
sneeze
about.
on people.
I've been thinking a lot about like how little I think of this kind of stuff of like, washing your hands
Right.
and like being mindful of your cough. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not like a slob in that way, but like I don't, when I go through a grocery store, like I don't think about that kind of stuff. I just do my thing and get out. And it's like now, like everywhere I go, I'm like very much aware of those things. And so it is a wake up call. Like I think we're all going to be a bit more like just aware of like what we're touching and what we're, that kind of stuff.
I personally, here's my guess. So it's April 14th right now. I think it's going to be extended to a degree through May for sure. And then I think after that, they're going to have to get people back out
work,
just for the economy. But what I hope they do is that they, instead of like handing out fines and telling people to go back indoors, that they tell people to wash their hands, wear a mask, wear gloves even. Look, I'd be fine putting on gloves and a mask if I was allowed to go out to a coffee shop again, or like if businesses were required to clean up every area that a customer was before the next customer sits there or touches something. Like, let's just get cleaner. We don't have to keep everything shut down and stay indoors forever,
Yeah, I'm really hoping by like June 1st, somewhat back to normal. I mean, it'd be great to be like back how it was, but that's not going to happen, I don't think. And so in my mind, I'm telling myself June 1st, like, maybe hopefully we can be working again. That's like what I'm going for.
Here's the thing too. At the end of the day, the government as a whole does not care that much about people's lives. People die all the time, which is like, this is really bleak, and I apologize for the bluntness, but what they're thinking about and really where the bottleneck is the healthcare system and infrastructure and the capacity of hospitals and of healthcare workers. And the whole reason why we've been shut down is because the rate was increasing so much that hospitals are being overrun. They don't have capacity. And then that's really where it gets scary, because then you have people getting violent. You have hospitals that are completely over capacity. It's out of control at that point. So if we can keep things controlled and then keep going outdoors cleaner, that's great with me. I think that's what we should push towards. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime before June, really.
Yeah. All right. Well,
that's my 2 cents for this whole coronavirus thing.
A clean segue.
Okay. Segue is, I mean, the timing of this whole thing has just been crazy.
Nice. Whoa, I'm impressed. I mean, yeah, for you, I'm extremely impressed.
It still was not smooth at all, but I tried my best.
I'll take that, man.
Cool.
10
That's
out
good.
of 10, Corey.
I'm improving, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
we'll finish it through. I mean, don't just stop right there.
I mean, the timing is crazy. I mean, and just think about. I have no segue. I'm done.
You're done.
Stop me there. Take over.
No, your topic, Corey. You're jumping us in, man.
Okay. Well, I wanted to talk about God's timing. One, it's a little bit roundabout, kind of how I got here, but I think it also is really applicable. We can talk about some of the ways, especially right now with coronavirus. We'll get to that. I'm sure everyone's a little bit tired of hearing about it, so we're not going to spend all of our time talking about that. But here's the thing. Here's kind of how this started. I don't know why, but for some reason on Easter, which, by the way, I don't know about you, but it did not feel like Easter to me. I had a really hard time. Yeah. Kind of, it just felt really strange.
Well, did you guys do anything like special at the house or?
we went to Monique's parents' house and we watched the service there with them online. And then we put out eggs around the yard. And then we had the youngest two siblings who are not that young. They're 14 and 16. Go out and find the eggs, which is actually really fun.
That's funny.
But yeah, it wasn't anything crazy.
Ask me about mine.
What'd you guys do for your Easter?
Thanks, man. That was funny. Thanks, man.
I just thought you would start talking, so
I wanted to ask to take interest in my life.
Yeah.
So ask again.
What did you guys do for Easter?
Yeah, dude. So we bought a lot of food and like we like planned it. Like Connie wanted to like do like a nice, because we have myself, Connie, and we have 2 roommates in our home, and so we wanted to like do something fun, kind of like create the family atmosphere. So we decided to stay home. My family was getting together, but we decided to be home. And so it's
just like the people who live here,
just like LeBon's household, Hudson Drive, like just the clan,
yeah.
And so we made ribs, we made mashed potatoes, pasta salad, deviled eggs, peach cobbler. We had like a full on Brussels sprouts. We had like way too much food, but it was fun because like we started cooking around like noon or whatever, and I think at 5 we ate. So it's like a whole day of like cooking and snacking. So it was fun. We all like bonded and hung out. Good family day. So yeah,
it's nice.
It was different for sure, but like we watched the service. We had like a slow morning, had donuts, and then did all that.
We played some Catan.
You did.
I've seen you guys been Cataning it up.
Playing a lot of Catan. I've also been getting into Phase 10.
Phase 10. I keep hearing. Yeah, it's an older game.
It's an old game. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever played it though.
Because it's pretty simple. It's a card game. It doesn't go on like for hours like Catan can, but it's fun. So.
That's cool. So, anyways.
Sorry. Back to what really matters.
Randomly during the Easter service, I think I was just thinking about Easter is all about Jesus' resurrection and his crucifixion and just Jesus' time in life. And, I think what it was? It was Dave Hoffman, gave the service and he was talking about, or he at least, introduced it. And then he also gave his testimony, which was cool. But he talked about how Jesus was here on the earth. And, when he was crucified, it was almost 2,000 years ago. And I was just like, that is so weird. Like 2,000 years ago, how trippy. And I was just thinking about how, like, what if, I've always thought like, what if we lived in that time and how weird would that be? Like, and how interesting it is that we live in this time. But then I kind of had the reverse thought of like, how weird would it be? And like, what would it be like if, Jesus lived now in like 2020 and if he was crucified, in 2033, or whatever the year is. And I was just trying to think about how like it wouldn't work or like it wouldn't be right, and how it was very intentional the way that God set things up. And when he did send Jesus down to earth, like that was God's timing. And it just, then I started going down this whole rabbit hole. To be honest, I was a little bit distracted during the message, just kind of like thinking about this whole thing, but that's a really deep rabbit hole thing about like God's timing, orchestrating, man's journey, and then Jesus, and now, the second coming eventually, but, we're 2,000 years later, and just how weird it would be, if Jesus was living here now, and how it was intentional that God sent Jesus when he did at that time in history.
It's a crazy thought. It's funny how, I was curious how you thought of this topic, but it's funny how like, during Dave's message, like that's where your head was, like going down this rabbit hole. I don't think that's bad. I think it's interesting. I've never thought about that. Never thought about like I've definitely given thought to like what if I was like born in like the medieval times, whatever. Like when I was younger, I like wanted that to happen, because I was always nice with the sword. But now I'm like, no, heck no, dude. I love like my time, of, where the world's at today.
Yeah,
like
very happy.
But I never thought about what if like Jesus came now, So that's a weird thought. I don't think I know how to respond, because I haven't really thought about it, but it's interesting.
So here's my thought process. And then there's a lot of other angles to this whole kind of theme of God's timing, but I think, and from kind of what I've read really briefly, I think that it was probably the earliest that Jesus could come. Like God wasn't late. Like he didn't wait around for a while and then send Jesus. Like I think that was the earliest time in the history of man on this world that God could have sent Jesus. And then like as soon as literally like that second was when Mary conceived Jesus, and then God knew sort of this whole plan was going to come into motion. But also I've never really thought about like why didn't Jesus come earlier in history and why not later? But I think it was also like, and this is actually probably like the easier kind of part of the equation, but definitely it was the earliest Jesus could have come because there had to have been a lot of prophetic and historical events that had to happen before he was born. And so you think about, right, even like the lineage and genealogy of Jesus and his ancestry, there had to have been people born and they had to have sons, and then those sons had to have sons, eventually leading to Jesus, right? The line of David. You had to have world events with different leaders and kings, empires that have gone through, fallen, come up, risen again, certain political environments, right? For Jesus even to be crucified, that was one of the really trippy things I thought about, was like, in 2020, would Jesus have been crucified? Like, probably not. We don't crucify people today. What I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe even earlier than that, crucifixion wasn't as common of a thing. In fact, I feel like I've read somewhere that crucifixion wasn't like it only happened for like a couple hundred years span time in history. So it had to have been somewhere within that kind of span there. But then also think about technology, and not to like nerd out because I'm a tech guy, but think about like innovations in like paper and in electricity. And then now, obviously we have things like the internet, and we have all sorts of, global connectiveness. But think about like Jesus and his message and spreading the gospel and how people would receive that today if he was here. And then 2,000 years later, like, let's think about like, okay, we live actually in, this is a little trippy here, but we live in 4020, not 2020. And we're looking back as if Jesus were here today, and people are like taking snapshots of Jesus doing miracles. And maybe it would have been like, okay, it doesn't make any sense, or like that was doctored, or someone made it up. Mm-hmm. Whereas today we look at these ancient texts and testimonies and historical records, and we take it as the truth because this was a historical thing that there's some historian or some sort of record keeper for a kingdom that wrote down that Jesus was here and that he was crucified. And so we see that as history, whereas someone else might see it as propaganda, or, there's still a lot of people that see it that way. But anyways, it got me thinking, like, one, that it was the earliest that Jesus could have come, but also it was like the latest that God would want Jesus to come, because any later, maybe there would have been too many advancements with paper, electricity, civilization, again, not crucifying people. So really God's timing was perfect in that sense.
Yeah, I think it's like thinking about what would happen if he came now. I feel like it'd be treated like, I don't know, man, like people were talking about this guy, Jesus, whatever. Like I could totally see it being like a conspiracy thing, or just like, I don't know, like it wouldn't, it's a weird thought. It's super weird. I don't see it working. Like, it's hard to say, but I think all that to say what you're communicating is like God's timing. Like it's different than what we expect, but it is perfect, and it is like it is right, and it is good. I want to talk about like what are other ways, other examples of how God's timing like has played out perfectly. I think just like for me and you to share like examples, like the easiest way to relate and walk through it. Yeah,
I mean, and that's kind of also where it took me, was thinking about God's timing, because you kind of hear that, right, with pastors and with people tell you like, oh, God's timing is perfect and you just have to wait on him, be patient, or, we don't understand, again, what's going on right now, but God's timing is perfect. And it doesn't really it doesn't really resonate the same way. I feel like now it's kind of giving me a little bit more perspective. But one of the things that Monique and I talk about all the time is how if we were even like friends, but especially if we had dated in high school, how we would not be married today, definitely. And how it's crazy that even though we had like literally all the same mutual friends at Foothills, that we were never friends. And then it wasn't until most of those friends left college, and then it was, me and you, Monique, and a couple other people that were just left here in San Diego. And then that's when we became friends, right? And then that's when we were ready to date. We were out of high school, and we were just kind of like mature enough to start that relationship. So we talk about all the time how, I mean, that's for sure God's timing, 100%. Like we would not be together if, I think God orchestrated that to some, because for some reason, I had no desire to be friends with her. It was just like,
Oh, I get that.
what?
Bang, bang.
I honestly, I mean, I feel like, and I've told her this, like, I just had this attitude of like, I didn't want to waste my time on her in the sense that I knew that she wasn't in the right place. And I knew that she was struggling with a lot of things. It wasn't that I didn't like her. But I think
But I feel like you had that like, and knowing you were very much to yourself and like content in that, and like it wasn't so much Monique. It was like anyone. Like if you didn't think it was like the right time, and you were like of the mindset of like, if we're right date, I'm gonna marry. And so it's like, anyone you really didn't give anyone any like thought. You're kind of like, I'm doing me. I'm playing Skyrim and I'm happy. You know. Also
very true. But that's part of God's timing, right? It was God knew His timing for me, and I was patient enough. Monique, I think, had to find that a little bit more like the hard way, now that she was like not waiting, but that it was a little bit more roundabout. And then somehow when we were both 19, we became friends and then started dating, and now we're married. Right. Yeah. But like, we could not have orchestrated that at all. There's no way.
Yeah. And I think, lost my train of thought. I think thinking about like God's timing is interesting because we're young right now. Like we haven't seen this play out a whole lot. And so it's like, I think for us, like and people that, you know, if you're around our age and you're listening to this, like, it's probably hard for you to like think about God's timing, what that means for you and what that looks like. For me, it is. And I think if I was to ask, you know, Dave Hoffman, right, or someone, you know, a little more seasoned, they'd have a lot more to say about it, a lot more actual examples. But, you know, I do have some I've thought through. I think, you know, I thought of this today actually, which might seem like doesn't relate, but I do think actually what's going on right now, like in our economy and like the virus, everything happening, I think for me personally, it's good timing, which sounds really weird. At first, I thought at first it could not have been any like worse timing. Yeah. But the more I've like thought it through, I'm actually a little bit thankful that I'm experiencing this right now. You know, one thing my dad and some of like mentors have always told me, like when it comes to business, they've always said like, don't overextend yourself and like always keep cash on hand. And I never like understood like why they were so like gun ho about that. Like I never got it, I guess, you know. And now I totally understand. Like it just clicks. It makes so much sense to me. And so I'm really glad that I like learned that lesson right now versus 15, 20 years down the road. I have a lot more at stake. And so that's one thing for me that I think like God's timing, like for me at least, and I'm sure for a lot of people, while this is like a really hard season, like if you take a step back, it's probably. I'm sure that it's the right season. It's the right timing, you know?
Totally. I mean, I can't say yet, but I feel, I felt, I don't know if actually we've done an episode on this, but like God's favor has just been like super evident in my own life. I think in your own life as well. But, it has me even excited about a couple of things. Like maybe this is God's timing for us to maybe finally buy a house, or like, this is the opportunity for us. Even I've been thinking about like, maybe this is a great time to start a business after this whole thing. And that's been a desire in my heart for, you know, many years, not a ton, not super seasoned, but since I was 18, you know, and maybe like this having happened is a great opportunity for me to finally kind of make that jumping off point. And, again, I wouldn't want to have just maybe quit my job and start a business and then this happened, right, when I'm just trying to get off the ground. But maybe that this happens and then I can start a business within the next year or so, that it's perfect timing. You know, so I still have that to be seen. But even, I mean, one of the other things I think that's really been like God's timing is when I started at Cordial, because I remember I was planning on proposing to Monique. It was like January 2018. Gosh, years are kind of blurring together a little bit now. 17. Yes.
17 is the year we graduated high school. College.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So January 2017. I was super nervous because I was going to my last semester of college. Didn't know what I was going to do, where I was going to work. I knew that her parents were going to ask me about what our plan was, and if we did want to get married, what I was going to do for work. Ended up getting engaged the first week of February, because I just couldn't wait any longer. And then it was that week that I was proposing, that I ended up getting an interview with Cordial, and I got the internship 2 days before I proposed. And then that ended up becoming my full-time job, and was what allowed me, I mean, like every penny that I made went to paying for the wedding and paying for, setting up our lives together. Yeah. But like that couldn't have been more better perfect timing.
Yeah. No, that's for sure. Like the way it played out was super smooth, like, right where it needed to be, and like right in its place.
Just enough time, just enough money, just enough, like the literal timing with getting a job with my last semester of college, graduating, going full-time right after that, and then putting every penny into our wedding was, couldn't match that anywhere else.
Yeah, for me, another example is right at the time before I left my previous job working for my dad at La Bonds, I was looking to buy a home. Like I really wanted to buy a home. I was saving up. I was like preparing for that. And like right by I would say about 4 months before I ended up leaving, I think I went to get like pre-approved for a loan, and it ended up like not coming like where I wanted it for the house that I was looking at, or the houses I was looking at. That's right. Kind of within my range. And I remember feeling like disappointed, let down. I think we talked about it. Fast forward like 4 months later, I ended up leaving Le Bonds and buying a business that I took over. And like thinking of that like right now, like I wouldn't have been able to have that opportunity to get my foot in the door to a new industry if I would have invested my money in a house. Wouldn't have worked that way for me. And so I'm just grateful for the way that one worked out. And then just like the timing of how like that transition developed, right? I think, I left the bonds, got engaged, and then like next week I bought the business and like started the business, and then moved out, and then 5 months later married, and then last year we bought another business. And it's just funny how it's like all like,
and now you just bought a home.
Right into, now we have the home. Yeah. So it's just funny how it's like it's really all, dude, as I'm talking about it, it makes more sense, but it's just weird how it's like fallen into place,
Yeah.
And it's funny because like I think this is a good exercise to do, like to look back, like, well, how has God's timing worked in your life? Because when you talk about the events, and like as I'm talking it through with you, like it kind of clicks. Like I understand like more. Oh yeah, like this God's hand really was over this like phase, and He will continue to be over,
Yeah, and I mean, think about it too. Like in the moment, you understand, or you can't really see the bigger picture. You don't know what's going to happen, right? So, but looking back on it, it seems obvious. It seems clear how God's working in your life and what things He's orchestrating for you, how the timing all works out. So it's hard, right? But you do have to trust the process and be patient and understand that God's timing is perfect for you.
But while it is like perfect, I don't even want to use the word perfect. Like it's right. It's like what it should be is like the right words, but it doesn't seem that way a lot of times. Like looking back at what I just explained, like when I wanted to buy the house and I had that meeting with the lender, and it didn't the broker or whatever, and didn't get it approved or whatever. I remember feeling like darn it, like this sucks. Like this is the answer I did not want to hear, but like you fast forward 6 months later, whatever, and like see what happened instead, So I think part of it is like perspective, like taking a step back and maybe ask other people's feedback. But also part of it is like when you're in it, like you're in the middle of like the process, like it's gonna be really hard to see it as being the right timing, But once things kind of go full circle, that's when you can see it, the whole picture.
Well, and one of the things too is like most of the time, God's timing is not your timing, and it's not the way that you think things are going to play out or the way that you planned things. I'll end with this. One of the books I'm reading right now is called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, and it's super good. John Mark Comer, but he shares a story that it's just like
finish it yet, Corey. It's been like a week and a half, dude. Surprised.
No, going through
2 weeks now, friends. Actually. Shoot.
It's been 3 weeks actually.
Dang.
But he shares a story that's just like baffling to me, and I don't know why I haven't thought about it before, but I think it's a perfect example of God's timing, because the whole book is about kind of like slowing down and how God wants us to live an unhurried life, and how hurry is the opposite of love and peace and a lot of the joys of the Spirit, or the fruits of the Spirit. And he shares a story of Jesus when he gets word of his friend, like his close friend Lazarus, dying. And basically, like, the messenger is like, Jesus, you have to come right now. Otherwise, it's going to die. And, like, you need to run. And he's like, okay. And, like, starts walking, and then, like, gets distracted and gets interrupted. And Jesus constantly was being interrupted in his ministry wherever he was. People would just literally throw themselves at his feet. And so he starts ministering to someone, and then they're like, what the heck? Like, Lazarus is literally dying. And I forget what exactly he tells them, because I'm just thinking of this example right now. But basically, he's like, he tells them like not to worry, and kind of just like goes about his business again, and is in no rush whatsoever. Lazarus dies, and they're like, what the heck? But Jesus knew all along that he was going to go and raise him from the dead, and it was going to be a part of his ministry all along, right? But Lazarus, I'm sure, is like, dude, what the heck? You let me die. His family is like, Jesus, why aren't you at least even like in a hurry to get over here? But Jesus knew his timing. He knew what was going on, and it definitely was not their timing.
Yeah, that's funny.
But it was just crazy.
I
Like,
never thought of that, but
like Jesus was okay with being interrupted. He knew how things were going to play out. He just had to let them play out, and because he was orchestrating things the timing that he wanted.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of it, like Jesus or God, like letting things play out. You know, like because when you're the one that's being played out on, it's not like what we want. Like it,
you're like, what's happening?
Exactly.
What's going on? Get me out of here.
Yeah, but I think I think again, like thinking about, okay, when you're 50 years old, you're gonna have a lot of these stories to tell. You know, like I think that's a thing to remember, because right now, like we're in the middle of like what's being made and what's happening. You know.
Yeah.
I had one more example I wanted to share.
Sure.
I think it's a good one to think about. But I think that I experienced it. There was a season in my life where there has been seasons where God has brought in like certain like people, like influence, whether it's like a mentor or just like a close friend or whatever. Like I've had seasons of being like really close to certain people, and specifically like mentors. And there's like one in particular for like a certain time in my life that was like, I don't think I would have made it through. I would have made it, obviously, but it would have been really a lot different without this man. So he made a big difference to me, and the way he was there for me, just loving on me, and always there, always a phone call away. Like this guy would call me like daily, just checking in, like went way above and beyond than he had to. But I really feel like, you know, that was, it couldn't have been better timing for him to be in my life, you know. And so I think God will bring people like when we need them, and like just like support that we need, and whatever it is, you know. Because
that, I mean, that was kind of like in the fires of hell with work and with relationships,
just like
and with
so much change and transition, and like that's actually right. That was right before we started this podcast. Like, remember we kind of we talked about like, dude, like that's not how this podcast started. Was like we both felt like unequipped to do what we were doing, and like, well, you know, there's got to be more people that feel this way, you know. And so yeah, that was like right after all that. So yeah, hard time in life, but his name was Greg, and he was just extremely helpful. So
shout out to Greg.
Shout out to Greg. He's the homie.
We
actually talked last week. We were just catching up. It was great.
Cool.
Yeah, he's cool.
Awesome, man. Well, I don't have any further thoughts. I'm still trying to wrap my head around. I don't think we'll ever be able to wrap our heads fully around God's timing, but I mean, I think that my main takeaway is like, trust it. You know, I think, again, for me, it's more like that saying didn't really have weight to me before, and now I think I understand at least more than I did before.
Yeah, there's been like this, like these lyrics stuck in my head, but it's been all my life he's been faithful. What's the word? Oh, so actually, I don't think it's a quote. He says, "All my life he's been faithful. Like, why would he stop now?" Like, I heard that somewhere, and it's been like stuck in my mind. Like, all my life God has been faithful. Like, why would he stop now? And so I think Drake remembering that, like, and I think that relates a lot to timing. But yeah.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, anything we need to close with? We've got merch. We'll have some exciting other announcements soon. We're working on things slowly but surely. Anything else?
That's it, man.
Okay. Let us know what you think about the podcast. Share it with someone else if they're struggling with God's timing. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next one.
All right. Peace.